Welcome back my channel. In 1972, America stood at a cultural crossroads. The Vietnam War was still unfolding. The Watergate scandal had yet to erupt. Inflation loomed, and the nation's currency, like its people, was under pressure. Yet even in such a politically charged atmosphere, the U.S. Mint maintained its pace, delivering billions of coins to an economy hungry for change. Among the most common of these was the 1-cent Lincoln penny, struck in massive numbers at the Philadelphia Mint. Its obverse still bore Victor David Brenner's iconic 1909 design of Abraham Lincoln, and the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo in 1959, depicted the Lincoln Memorial in clean, symmetrical detail. It was routine, systematic, unassuming. And then, quite unexpectedly, came the error. The year's production was immense. Over 2.9 billion pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint alone. Yet, despite such scale, a single die malfunction created what would later become one of the most significant and highly sought-after varieties in modern numismatics, the 1972 double die obverse. For many, the idea of a double die seems technical, even dull. But in practice, it's a stunning visual event. A double die occurs not during the coin strike itself, but in the creation of the die, the steel cylinder used to impress the coin's design. When a die is improperly manufactured, receiving more than one impression from the hub that is slightly misaligned, the result is doubling on the coin's features. This is not to be confused with machine doubling, a more common and far less valuable occurrence. True double dies are dramatic, intentional looking, and deeply fascinating to collectors. In the case of the 1972 cent, the doubling was especially prominent. The letters in Liberty, the date, 1972, and the motto, "In God We Trust," all displayed strong, clear secondary impressions. These weren't subtle shifts or minor anomalies, they were bold, visible to the naked eye, even without magnification. And yet, in 1972, the general public was unaware that it wasn't until coin dealers began noticing anomalies in bags of freshly struck cents that suspicions were raised. A collector named Howard, operating out of Michigan, was the first to truly investigate. He had received a large shipment of new 1972 cents for roll hunting. After sorting through a few hundred coins, he noticed something strange. One of the coins had letters that appeared doubled. He examined it under a loupe, then under a microscope. The doubling wasn't slight, it was pronounced. He'd seen machine doubling before, but this was different. The secondary impressions had depth. They followed the contours of the original design. Howard sent the coin for expert review, and what came back shocked even seasoned collectors. He had found a genuine double die obverse, a bold variety that would soon gain legendary status among Lincoln cent enthusiasts. As word spread, more examples began to surface. But the numbers were limited. For every 100,000 1972 cents searched, perhaps one or two showed the distinct doubling. Experts eventually concluded that only one working die at the Philadelphia Mint had caused the error, and that only a small number of coins had been struck before the die was replaced or retired. The impact was swift. Dealers began advertising the 1972 double die obverse in coin magazines and newsletters. Prices climbed, first slowly, then explosively. Collectors began hoarding 1972 cents, combing through them in search of the now famous variety. The error was eventually catalogued as FS 101 in the 5S Stanton reference system, and its popularity only grew with time, but the coin's journey didn't stop there. In 1989, a pristine example graded MS65 red appeared at auction and fetched nearly $10,000, an enormous sum at the time for a modern penny. In 2004, a high-grade example in MS66 red sold for over $30,000. And in 2016, a specimen in MS67 red, the finest known at the time, crossed the auction block and achieved an astonishing result. Behind each of these transactions was not just a coin, but a story, a mistake that slipped past quality control, a sharp-eyed collector who recognized its value, and a marketplace that had evolved to treasure such oversights. What made the 1972 double die so captivating wasn't merely its rarity. It was the clarity of the error. Unlike many other varieties that require close inspection or esoteric knowledge, this one was obvious. Anyone, even a child, could spot the doubling. That made it approachable. It inspired people to check their change, to learn more about numismatics, to participate in the hunt. As the years passed, more varieties of 1972 cents were catalogued. At least 10 minor double die variations exist, but only one stood at the top. The original, the bold, the unmistakable FS 101. Then came the unexpected twist. In 2021, a collector named Sabrina, a high school teacher in Vermont, purchased a mixed lot of pennies at a flea market. Most were common, heavily circulated pieces. But tucked among them was a gleaming 1972 cent, brilliant red and completely untinted. When she examined it under her teaching microscope, she saw it immediately, the crisp doubling in Liberty, the shadowed echo in God We Trust. She sent it to PCGS for grading. It returned as MS67 red. One of the finest ever graded. The coin was quietly sold to a private collector for a sum that reached six figures, that find reignited public interest in the 1972 double die. News articles followed. Coin collectors on social media shared images, hoping theirs might be the next miracle. And suddenly, a 50-year-old coin was once again making headlines. The 1972 US 1-cent penny with the double die obverse is a monument to imperfection, a reminder that even in the most mechanized, controlled systems, human error persists, and sometimes, those errors become beautiful. It remains one of the most visually striking errors in the Lincoln Cent series, beloved by collectors for its clarity, its rarity, and its legacy. Today, depending on condition and color designation, certified examples of the 1972 double die obverse penny range in value from $38,000 to $130,000. It is not merely a cent, it is a piece of accidental artistry, a fluke that became a legend, and a living testament to the magic still hiding in everyday change. By the mid-1990s, the Lincoln penny was a quiet constant in American life. It had been circulating for nearly 9 decades and had undergone multiple transitions in composition and minor design revisions. The obverse still bore Abraham Lincoln's solemn profile, a tribute to the nation's 16th president since 1909. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial still stood in centered symmetry, a design introduced in 1959 that, by 1996, was showing signs of fatigue. That year, the U.S. Mint at Philadelphia and Denver struck over 13 billion 1-cent coins. The copper-plated zinc blanks rolled down conveyors, struck by dies with incredible speed, and clinked into containers destined for banks, vending machines, lunch counters, and back pockets. Yet among this sea of sameness, a peculiar anomaly emerged, one that few saw coming. The 1996 penny error was not instantly obvious. It didn't involve a wild misstrike or a misplaced mint mark. Instead, the error was subtle, hidden in plain sight. It was a double die obverse, but unlike earlier, more dramatic examples like the 1972 or 1955 varieties, the doubling here didn't scream for attention. It whispered. And only the keenest eyes were ready to listen. The doubling was most prominent in the inscription, Liberty, and the date, 1996. On affected coins, the doubling created a faint echo of the original design, a ghost-like second impression offset just enough to unsettle the symmetry. On In God We Trust, especially around the letters God, the doubling danced in delicate separation. Yet these nuances were easy to miss during casual inspection. It took patience, magnification, and a sense of familiarity to notice what was different. That's how Michael, a part-time collector from Colorado, found his. He had been hunting coins since childhood but only recently became serious about varieties and errors. He was armed with an old loop and a stack of bank-wrapped rolls, searching not for valuable metal but for the unintentional artifacts of human error. The 1996 penny wasn't supposed to be anything special. But then he saw it, a clean, red penny with an odd shimmer to the word Liberty. He turned it under the light and saw the duplication. Not mechanical doubling, but die doubling. It was sharp, intentional looking, unmistakable. He compared it with other 1996 cents. None of them had the same feature. He checked known listings, no major double die varieties had been confirmed for that year. Was it new? Was it rare? He sent it to a grading service for verification. The wait was agonizing. When the coin returned, the results confirmed his suspicion: double die obverse. Not a machine bounce or post-mint damage, but a true double die, one produced by a misalignment during the creation of the die itself. And even more surprising, it was graded MS66 red, a near-flawless specimen with its original luster intact. It became the first recognized double die of that kind for the 1996 cent, and its discovery sparked a movement. Collectors took notice. Error hunters, variety specialists, and roll searchers began pulling 1996 pennies by the hundreds. In time, a few more examples surfaced, each exhibiting slightly different characteristics, but most concentrated around the inscriptions. Some theorized that more than one die had been affected. Others speculated that it was an early hubbing error, caught and corrected late in the die's production cycle. But the damage, or in this case, the magic, had already been done. The coins were out there. And their population was startlingly low. Then came a second revelation: that a specimen surfaced in California that not only exhibited the same obverse doubling but also showed a dramatic die clash, a situation where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving mirrored elements of the opposite side etched faintly into the fields. On this coin, part of the Lincoln Memorial's central columns appeared faintly over Lincoln's jawline. The error was certified as both a double die obverse and a clash die, a hybrid anomaly, born of two separate mishaps colliding within the tight tolerances of minting machinery. That coin sold privately for a reported six-figure sum. The numismatic world began to re-evaluate 1996. Once considered an ordinary year, it was now a minefield of hidden surprises. Collectors began examining not just the doubling but the coin's overall strike quality, rim thickness, and die state. Some 1996 pennies showed light die deterioration doubling, while others hinted at more significant underlying misalignments. The more they searched, the more they realized how narrow the error window had been. Most doubled specimens came from an extremely limited die run, likely produced and retired within a matter of days. As interest surged, the coin's value began to rise. In the early 2000s, even lightly circulated examples sold for several $100s. By the 2010s, as more were certified and documented, prices for high-grade examples climbed into the tens of thousands. The record came in 2023, when an MS67 red double die obverse example, accompanied by provenance from its original discoverer, sold at a major auction house for $1.1 million. It shattered expectations and redefined what a modern penny could be worth, but for many, the story was never just about money. It was about discovery, about looking closer, about seeing value where others saw nothing. It was about proving that even in an era of automation and control, human error still slips through. And when it does, it can leave behind a legacy worth far more than a cent today. The 1996 US 1-cent penny with the confirmed double die obverse remains a prized rarity. Only a small number of certified examples exist, and fewer still in gem-uncirculated condition. The error is subtle, elusive, and unlisted in many mainstream guides, making it both a challenge and a delight for those willing to seek it. In the world of coins, where most pieces are forgotten as quickly as they pass from hand to hand, this one stands apart. Not because of what it was intended to be, but because of what it accidentally became. Its current market value, depending on grade and specific die characteristics, ranges from $20,000 for mid-grade uncirculated examples to a staggering $1,110,000 for the finest and rarest known specimens. And somewhere out there, perhaps in a coin jar or an old drawer, another might still be waiting to be found. In 2014, the United States Mint was operating at full pace, responding to the demands of a modern, digital-age economy still deeply reliant on physical currency. Lincoln cents continued to pour from the presses by the billions, largely unnoticed, quietly fueling commerce. With over 8 billion 1-cent coins produced that year, the 2014 penny was never meant to stand out. It was just another copper-plated zinc disc bearing the same familiar image of Abraham Lincoln that had persisted for over a century. But somewhere within that flood of uniformity, a quiet error crept in, unintended, unnoticed, and almost entirely unrecorded. The obverse of the 2014 penny was unchanged from previous years: Lincoln's right-facing bust, flanked by the motto, "In God We Trust," the word "Liberty," and the date. The reverse still bore Lyndall Bass's Union Shield design, introduced in 2010, featuring 13 vertical stripes and a horizontal bar bearing the inscription, E Pluribus Unum. The design was straightforward and clean, but the year would prove to be far less predictable than the coin's appearance suggested. It started with an unusual find in the Midwest. Jacob, a casual coin roll hunter from Indiana, had been sorting through boxes of bank-wrapped pennies in his garage. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just wheat pennies, maybe some older memorial backs. The 2014 coins didn't interest him at first. Too new, too common. But one coin caught his eye. It had a strange shimmer along the word "Liberty," almost like it had been printed twice. He tilted it under a lamp. There it was again, doubling. Not faint or mechanical. Not damage. It looked deliberate. He slid the coin under his USB microscope and froze. The letters in "Liberty" and the digits 2014 both displayed distinct, raised shadows, a second set of contours offset slightly from the originals. The doubling was sharp and consistent. He reached for another 2014 cent. It was normal. He found 10 more. Normal. Then 20. Still nothing. The anomaly appeared to be unique. Jacob sent the coin to a well-known third-party grading service, nervously writing "possible double die obverse" in the notes section of the submission form. Weeks passed. Then the report came back, "double die obverse confirmed." Graded MS66 read, "That changed everything." The discovery wasn't widely publicized at first. But those in the numismatic community who saw the certified label began asking questions. Could there be more? Was this a newly identified variety? No major listings included a double die for the 2014 cent, which made the find all the more curious. Gradually, word spread through collector forums, error coin groups, and specialist newsletters. Some collectors dismissed it as a one-off, a die anomaly not worth pursuing. But others started searching. And slowly, more surfaced. Each new specimen reinforced the initial theory: the doubling was caused by a true double die, created during the hubbing process of the die itself. The telltale signs were consistent across all verified examples. On the obverse, the doubling appeared strongest in "Liberty" and the last two digits of the date. On some coins, "In God We Trust" also showed slight separation in the upper letters. The reverse was unaffected, suggesting that only one working obverse die at the Philadelphia Mint had been involved. That made the error exceptionally rare. By late 2015, a few more examples had been authenticated, mostly in uncirculated condition. High-grade specimens showed blazing red surfaces and crisp devices, making the doubling even more evident under magnification. Coin grading firms began quietly tracking the variety, assigning it internal reference numbers even as it remained mostly unknown to the general public. Then came an unexpected twist. In 2018, a collector from Arizona uncovered a 2014 penny with the exact same doubling, on both the obverse and reverse. Experts were skeptical. Reverse doubling from a true double die is exceedingly rare, especially when paired with a confirmed obverse double die. But analysis confirmed it: the coin had been struck using both a doubled obverse die and a clashed or misaligned reverse die. It became the first known dual-error example for that year. The coin was graded MS65 red and later sold in a private transaction to a collector of Lincoln cent anomalies for a considerable five-figure sum. The find reignited interest in the 2014 double die cent coin. Dealers began offering small premiums for raw rolls of 2014 pennies. Searchers went back through their old bank boxes. Coin shops that once overlooked the date began placing it under their store scopes. But the coins remained elusive. Population reports from grading agencies confirmed the rarity. Fewer than 200 examples of the 2014 double die obverse had been certified across all grades. Of those, only a small fraction were mint state 66 red or better. And only one dual-error specimen was ever documented. Prices followed a predictable arc. In 2016, Early sales ranged from a few $100s for mid-grade examples to over $2,000 for uncirculated pieces. But as the rarity was established and demand grew, values rose steadily. By 2022, clean, red examples in MS65 and MS66 routinely brought between $8,000 and $12,000 at auction. And in 2023, a bidding war broke out over a pristine MS67 red specimen with flawless surfaces and exceptional eye appeal. The hammer price stunned attendees and set a new record for the variety. The appeal of the 2014 penny era lies not just in its rarity, but in its subtlety. Unlike the bombastic 1955 or 1972 double dies, this one invites a second glance. It rewards scrutiny. And it represents the continuing presence of error in an age where technology is supposed to eliminate it. It proves that even today, with advanced quality control systems and automated minting machinery, the possibility of a mistake slipping through remains, and when it does, it creates something extraordinary. The 2014 US 1-cent penny with the confirmed double die obverse remains a stealth rarity, underrated by many, beloved by those who've seen it up close. It has no grand nickname or bold PR campaign. It lives quietly in collections, in protective slabs, in airtight capsules, away from sunlight but not from awe. Its current market value, depending on condition and variety, ranges from $9,000 for mid-level uncirculated examples to $65,000 for the finest certified specimens. For a coin most believed was too new, too common, too boring to be worth a second glance, it has become a modern legend, one whispered about among collectors and hunted in silence by those who know just how much a small mistake can be worth.